Hi students, in the last video for this week I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the cultural effects of the New Deal, at least as we've seen it so far, and kind of look at the second term of FDR's presidency. We find that in the midst of the Great Depression and the New Deal that there is a boom in terms of the arts, and they approach these trying circumstances in different ways. On the one hand, we see literature like The Grapes of Wrath by Richard Steinbeck that tries to engage and to understand and to relate the sufferings that Americans are going through during this period of extreme economic hardship. And on the other side, we have popular culture and the continued rise of the movie industry, especially now with talking movies, and movies like Gone with the Wind that encourage Americans to forget about the struggles, the economic struggles that they're facing, and instead to find escape, to find diversion in popular culture. In the 1936 presidential election, FDR has a huge electoral victory that is mirrored by Democratic control, overwhelming Democratic control of both houses of Congress, 77-19 in the Senate and 328-107 in the House of Congress. And so Franklin Roosevelt has been able to establish what's called a New Deal coalition for Democrats. So Democrats have had a hard time winning elections since the Civil War. And Roosevelt has been able to combine traditional Democrat strongholds in the South and in the North with moving west, with ethnic groups in the big cities, and with African Americans. And so Roosevelt has had this huge electoral victory that he sees as a mandate to continue to drive his New Deal program. And so he tries to eliminate the institution that's been the main obstacle to this program so far, which is the Supreme Court. And he tries to do this through a measure that's called packing the court. According to the Constitution, it was Congress that determined the number of justices. So the number of justices determined by the Congress. Individual justices are selected by the president. And so Roosevelt, with this huge majority, tries to persuade Congress to expand the court from 9 justices to 15. And he hopes that by doing this, he'll be able to nominate 6 justices that all agree with him, and then he'll win every Supreme Court case from this point onwards. Interestingly enough, even though Roosevelt is still very popular as a president, this is too far for most Americans. And they see this as an overreach of presidential power. We've seen the power of the federal government growing this week as part of the New Deal program. This is a bridge too far for most Americans, and this deal is rejected in the Senate. Nevertheless, the phrase that's been used is that Roosevelt loses this battle, but he wins the war. The Supreme Court justices really have been read the Riot Act. And so they start to issue more favorable rulings to the New Deal. 4 of the more conservative justices retire. By the end of his presidency, Roosevelt will have nominated 8 Supreme Court justices, which is the most in history. Nevertheless, as we move towards the end of the 30s, success of the New Deal has been limited. The unemployment rate is still at 17%. So all these measures that have been passed, all this extra money that's gone into the system and has been spent by the government has reduced unemployment by about 1/3 of what it had been. But it doesn't seem to be able to get it any further. And whenever Roosevelt tries to rein in the federal government spending, they see the economy stagnate again. So it's not as though the economy at the moment is necessarily responding to these programs. And so this is the failure of the New Deal, the failure to fully eliminate the hardships of the Great Depression and return unemployment and employment to the levels that they were before the Great Depression. Its achievements are that it provides a secure future for Americans in a time of peril, at least for most Americans. The Depression doesn't get any worse. And also that it establishes this new relationship, a much stronger relationship of federal oversight over the lives of American citizens in their work, in their homes, in their families, in their relationships with their elderly. The federal government will now become a consistently important player. And this is the change that's taken place as a result of the New Deal.